Okay.
Well, hey everyone. Once again, I'd like to introduce Jesse Bolli. He is a resource management specialist down at Homestead National Historic Park, just south of Lincoln. I'm really happy to have him here, and he's going to be talking a little bit about some of the activities that are ongoing at the park, along with how the CESU has been and could potentially be leveraged in the future. Take it away, Jesse. Thanks again.
Thanks a lot, Brandon. Thank you for the invitation. I'm excited to be able to visit with you folks today. What I'm going to do today, I'm going to start off with just kind of an introduction to the park and the resources we have here. And then I'm going to highlight some of our past CESU projects and how the CESU program has helped the park in the past. And so Homestead National Historical Park, we were created to tell the story of the Homestead Act of 1862. Homestead Act of 1862 was a law that allowed you to claim 160 acres of government surveyed land. And if you lived on that land for 5 years and built a house on it and cultivated the soil, then that land was yours. And so the law had huge impacts on the United States. Here at the park, we really focus on how the Homestead Act, it really changed immigration patterns, also had major impacts on farming and the mechanization of agriculture, as well as some maybe not so desirable impacts, impacts it had on the Native Americans. Many treaties were signed, many treaties were broken, and the environment as well. Through the law, 270 million acres of land was transferred directly from the government to the people. It's almost the size of Texas and California pushed together. And so there's a huge chunk of land that was transferred, that was made into farms, that was natural ecosystems that was now being farmed. And so it had huge impacts. 30 different states, all the cream-colored states had homestead claims filed in them. So it was a wide-reaching law. And it was long-lasting as well. The first homesteader, Daniel Freeman, he filed his homestead claim on January 1st of 1863, just a little bit after midnight. And so he's recognized by most historians as the very first homesteader. Homesteading didn't peak, though, until about 1913. And so, and then the last person to receive his final patent was Ken Deerdorf. Ken Deerdorf received his final patent in 1988 up in Alaska. And so, 123 years that the law was on the books, it was 125 years until Ken Deerdorf received his final patent. And so that's how he got his place. And so because the law had such huge impacts, the Park Service felt that there should be a monument to the Homestead Act. And so in 1936, President Franklin Delano Roosevelt signed the law that created Homestead National Monument of America, which in 2020 became Homestead National Historical Park. I still haven't got used to that. We're here to tell the story of the Homestead Act and the impacts it had on the United States. And so they felt that the best place to tell that story would be the site of the very first homestead claim that was filed in the United States. And so this is Daniel Freeman's homestead claim. By choosing this 160 acres in a T shape, so you had 340s going across the back or the south, and 140 to the north. By doing that, he got all this good flat land on one side of the creek, but yet he did get some creek and good timber as well. So he had good building materials. And so he kind of got a great homestead claim. Right away after the National Park Service received the land in 1939, they worked with Adolph Murray, who in consultation with John E. Weaver, helped to develop plans to restore the land back to its native vegetation. And so Adolph Murray in that first management plan said that it would seem desirable to make an effort early in the program to restore some of the more prominent spring, summer, and fall flowers to show part of nature, which no doubt gave some cheer to the very first settlers. And so it's great, right away in the beginning of the management of the natural resources of Homestead, they're talking about biodiversity. And we continue to manage it in much the same manner, manage the land to promote the native biodiversity, and to in a way that it reflects the value of the site as a homestead, represents as accurately as possible the environment encountered by the early settlers, and preserves native biodiversity. And so when we're thinking about the native biodiversity, you can think about, we have some great high quality restored tallgrass prairie here at Homestead, about 100 acres, as I mentioned, restoration starting back in 1939, 1940. We have about 60 acres of lowland bur oak woodland. Some of the best examples of that community type in the state of Nebraska. And then we have about a mile of stream that flows through the monument in Cub Creek. And so that, again, we're a small site, with the additions that we've received over the years, still under 220 acres. We're a small site, but we have a great diversity of plant community types and habitats. And so, so how do we know what we have here? Well, partnership with the University of Nebraska began clear back in the 1980s, before there was the CESU. The park was working a lot with Dr. Stubendick and Sutton to figure out what plants were actually here. Today, our inventory and monitoring network does a lot of the long-term monitoring here at the park. They do a great job of getting the data collected and then getting it published as well. And so, for the researchers in the room, that's a great opportunity as well, as to actually come to the Park Service to look at what the MPS employees are doing. When we're thinking about that inventory and monitoring network, when they were getting started, they started with some inventories. And to get those inventories done, they used the CESU program quite a bit. Fogel in 04 was doing an inventory of the herps. Lynn Robbins from Southern Missouri State University was doing the mammal survey under a CESU. And then some of the Heartland folks were doing research as well on birds and the aquatic invertebrates. And a plug for a great MPS resource. All the information that the MPS collects and publishes is on this website, the irma.mps.gov. And so that is a great website to check out. And so when we think about managing the resources here at the homestead, Prescribed Fire is one of the biggest tools that we use. The Prescribed Fire program started back in 1970. It's one of the earlier Prescribed Fire programs in the National Park Service, and has been continues since then, more or less. Recently, we've been trying to do some more burns in the woodland to try to help promote that bur oak woodland. We haven't figured out the timing on that. In the last couple of years, it's been dry, almost too dry when we want to burn, and then the wind hasn't been right. So hopefully this spring we can still get a woodland burn done, but the snow is kind of hampering it. But we also do a lot of just manual woody vegetation removal, and then we do some herbicide application as well. This year we had a weed wiper set up on the front of a tractor. It worked pretty good for the smooth sumac removal. But the only chemical that we could use in it was a Roundup products, and not the greatest chemical for getting woody species knocked out, but it was a good try. And then we also do a lot of environmental education, whether it's bugs or water quality. And that's maybe my favorite part of the job, is to get out there and try to inspire kids and get them excited about what is out there in the environment. And so just to highlight a couple of the past CESU projects and kind of how we've used the CESU program in the past. Right away when I started my career here, we worked with Dr. Richard Sutton, and he's a amazing guy who has a lot of passion about hedgerows. And so he was able to come to Homestead and evaluate our hedgerow for us and help to provide some suggestions on how the Park Service should manage that into the future. And so we've continued to reference that plan and in protecting the historic hedgerow. The hedgerow was planted by Daniel Freeman back in probably the 1870s, as near as he can tell. He tried to do some dating of it, but he kept breaking his bits off in the trees because they're so hard. So it was challenging, but he did get a few dated and enough to tell that the trees that are there now probably grew back from the stumps. It looks like it was, probably clear cut in the 1930s or 20s before it became a National Park Service site. But a lot of great stuff. And so that's, one way that the CSU program has really helped us to protect a natural and cultural important resource at the park. More recently, we've had Dr. Eric North here working and helping to evaluate the woodland, the forest, and kind of really focusing in on the dead and down material in the woodland, and kind of, there's a perception that any dead stuff in a woodland is too much, and so trying to quantify how much we had out there and to kind of put that into perspective. And so he did a great job of that for us. And then the most exciting project that with the CSU lately, or the one I'm most excited about, was working with Dr. Craig Allen and Chris Phil to do some bat research within the park. And once you start doing bat research, you realize how little research is actually out there. And so with this CESU project, it was nice because Dr. Allen was able to take it and work it into a larger project that the university had going on. And so, we were able to kind of piggyback with the funding that we were able to provide into a larger project. And so Chris wasn't only just sampling at the park, he was sampling in a larger agrarian space. But, because of our ability to use the CSU, we were able to get him to also sample intensively within the park. And so my favorite part of his whole report are probably these 4 pictures right here, though. And so it's just he was able to put some transmitters on the northern long-eared bat, and federally endangered species now, and he was able to find them in, looking at the wrong camera, in the fence row. And so we can see, down here where he was, the bats were climbing up this little shadow box as a day roost area. So one of those things that you never think about, as a manager here at Homestead, oh, we're going to tear down a fence, and who would have thought that would have been prime bat habitat? And so that was a way that a CSU project really helped us in managing. I think that's why we're doing the research. But also, looking at some of these snags, this little bat had climbed up under this little piece of bark and was hanging out in the day. And then you can see this tiny tree, not a very big diameter. The finger pointing there, I don't know how well you can see that on your screen, but you can tell it's a small tree. And there was just a little knot hole. And Chris was able to track the bat and see just the antenna sticking out of that little hole. And that's where it was roosting during the day. So another important habitat that he was able to identify. And the funding mechanism that the CSU provided helped to get that done. And Dr. Craig Allen able to use it to kind of leverage as a part of another project to get maybe more bang for us, but it worked out well. A long-term monitoring project, or a long-term CESU project that's been going on here at Homestead. It kind of started with Dr. Rick Edwards in the Center for Great Plains Studies, is the Black Homesteading Project. And, by being able to request funding and get funding and to get funding to the university for this project, a lot of great research has come out. This great manuscript here, the Black Homesteaders in the Great Plains. a little known part of our history, that he was really, the Center for Great Plains Studies was really able to focus in on and provide a lot of new knowledge to the Park Service and to the greater, community as well. And so some great projects there as well. As we look, current project right now with Dr. Dan Uden, this is another one that's kind of maybe CSU, maybe not, but because of the CESU framework, I knew that I could contact, or Nancy encouraged me to contact Brandon, and we were able to find a university professor that was able to do some GIS work for us. And so Dr. Uden is looking at, what is visible from the park. And so we can kind of get the view shed. When you look at the, enabling legislation, or the Organic Act and National Park Service, right away it said we're supposed to protect the scenic values. And so how are we going to protect the scenic value if we don't know if we can see a proposed action or not? And so he is doing some great work and introducing LiDAR data to kind of identify what I'm calling permanent vegetation. People will probably argue with me, but the tree rows and maybe some of the buildings that are already there, he's taking that into account to seeing if different installations will be visible from the park. And so excited to see that project wrap up later this year. But the little parts that I've seen of it have been great. And so it's a great addition. And so, that project is actually didn't get to the formal agreement threshold for dollars. We were able to do that under a different funding mechanism. And so, it's not a CESU agreement, but it's because of Brandon and his connections through the CSU that we were able to get that going. And then, what else could we be doing here at Homestead? Well, for the past several years, I've been working with the Nebraska Game and Parks to introduce the fat mucket and plain pocketbook mussels. And so the Park Service has been, I think not the Park Service, the Game and Parks has tagged about 600 of the mussels with pit tags. And we have monitoring data for 2 years. And so, be a great opportunity for a researcher, master's project, whatever, to come down and do some more work with mussels. We're looking for funding to learn more about the insects of the prairie. We're looking for funding to learn more about the bats, and so all those projects are out there, and there's still a lot of opportunities to learn more here at Homestead. So with that was a quick overview of the park, and kind of how we've been using in the past, and how we'll continue to partner with the Great Plains CESU. So go ahead and open it up to any questions if anyone has any. So with that, thank you very much for allowing me to present. And I look forward to continue to work with the CESUs into the future. So thank you.
Thanks, Jesse. Brandon, you there?